All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're going deep on how to not just survive, but actually thrive during the holidays. We're talking self-care strategies to stay healthy and happy, even when your to-do list is a mile long and your calendar's bursting at the seams. We're calling this a deep dive into holiday self-care.
It's funny how we all get caught up in this idea of the perfect holiday season. But let's be real, nobody actually lives in a Hallmark movie.
So true. And when our real lives inevitably clash with those picture-perfect expectations, that's when the stress and the overwhelm really kick in. But thankfully, the source material we're diving into today is all about ditching that perfection pressure and finding real, genuine joy amidst all the holiday chaos. So where do we even begin?
Well, the first step might seem simple, but it's definitely not always easy. We have to actively shift our mindset from obligation to joy. Instead of feeling like you have to do it all, I want you to ask yourself this. What are three things that truly matter to me this season?
Ooh, I love that. It's like creating your filter for all those holiday to-dos.
Exactly. If it doesn't align with those three core things, maybe it's okay to say no.
Okay, that makes sense. I need to get better at saying no. But speaking of feeling overwhelmed, let's talk about that holiday calendar. Mine's already looking like a war zone of overlapping commitments.
I hear you. Mine too. It's like we forget we're human beings, not holiday robots programmed to bake, shop, and party 24/7.
Right. Tell me about it. I'm already exhausted just thinking about it.
Well, that's where this idea of mindful scheduling comes in. And it's not just about squeezing everything in, it's about strategically creating what's called white space.
White space. So like leaving entire days blank on my calendar. My family might stage an intervention.
Haha, not necessarily entire days, but think of it as intentional pauses throughout your week. Even just 30 minutes here and there to decompress can do wonders for your mental and emotional well being.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I can definitely get behind that. Because otherwise, I'm going to be burnt out by December 10th, like that one year where I said yes to every single cookie exchange holiday party and gift wrapping extravaganza. It was too much. I literally ended up with a holiday cold before the actual holidays even started.
Oh no, yeah, that's a classic example of how overcommitting can backfire big time. And speaking of energy levels, this might seem obvious, but even during the holiday whirlwind, it's super important to maintain healthy habits.
Ugh, I know you're going to say exercise, aren't you? But the only thing I want to lift in December is a forkful of mashed potatoes.
Haha, well, I wouldn't dream of taking away your mashed potatoes. But even small bursts of activity can make a huge difference. Research shows that just 10 minutes of brisk walking can boost your mood and energy levels for hours.
10 minutes. Huh.
Yep.
Okay, maybe we can squeeze that in.
It's about fitting in movement where you can like taking the stairs instead of the elevator or having a dance party while you wrap presents.
Okay, a dance party I can definitely get behind. Speaking of things that are good for us, let's talk about sleep, or rather, the lack thereof during the holidays. Why do we do this to ourselves?
It's like we think sleep is a luxury we can't afford in December, but actually it's the opposite. When you're sleep deprived, your body produces more of the stress hormone cortisol, which can actually suppress your immune system, making you more susceptible to getting sick.
Wait, so not only will I be grumpy and exhausted, but I'm more likely to catch a cold if I don't get enough sleep. I'm officially terrified. Tell me there's a quick fix.
There is. You know those power naps everyone jokes about? Turns out they're incredibly effective. Research shows that even a 20-minute nap can significantly improve alertness and cognitive function.
All right, so power naps are officially going on my holiday to-do list right alongside those dance breaks. Now let's talk about a topic that's a little less fun, budgeting. I always feel this pressure to spend a fortune in December, but honestly, my bank account starts sweating just thinking about it.
It's so easy to get swept up in the consumerism frenzy, but what if we reframed our thinking about gifts? What if instead of focusing on the price tag, we focused on the thoughtfulness behind them?
Okay, but how do I actually do that when everyone on my list seems to want the latest tech gadget or designer handbag?
That's where setting a realistic budget and sticking to it comes in. There are even some great apps that can help you track your spending in real time.
Ooh, I love a good budgeting app. It takes all the guesswork out of it. And speaking of things that make us feel good, let's talk about gratitude. I'm a big believer in those gratitude journals, especially during the holidays.
You're onto something there. It's not just feel-good fluff. There's actual science behind the power of gratitude. When we practice gratitude, our brain releases dopamine and serotonin, which are neurotransmitters that make us feel happy and content.
So basically, being thankful is like a little happiness hack for our brains. I'm into it. But how do we make it a consistent habit, especially when we're juggling a million things?
One simple practice is to make it a nightly ritual. Before you go to sleep, think of one thing you're grateful for and write it down or share it with someone. It could be something big or small. The point is to actively shift your focus to the positive.
I love that. It's like a little dose of positivity before bed. But let's be real, sometimes the holidays aren't all sunshine and rainbows. What about when we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed? How do we deal with those less than jolly emotions?
That's where self-compassion comes in. It's about acknowledging that it's okay to not feel joyful all the time. The holidays can be a roller coaster of emotions, and trying to suppress those feelings can actually backfire. A quote I find helpful is, "The word emotion stands for energy in motion." Allow yourself to feel the full tapestry of human emotions.
Ooh, that's deep. It's like giving ourselves permission to be human, even during the holidays. But on the flip side, it's also important to make time for things that actually bring us joy, right?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Amidst all the holiday hustle, it's crucial to carve out time for activities that light you up. What are some things that come to mind for you?
Okay, I'm thinking cozy movie nights, baking cookies with ridiculously festive sprinkles, maybe even trying out a new holiday craft. What about you? What sparks joy for you during the holidays?
For me, it's about creating those moments of quiet connection, whether it's a long phone call with a dear friend or simply curling up with a good book by the fireplace. Those moments of stillness really recharge me.
That sounds lovely. It's like giving yourself permission to slow down and savor the simple things.
Mm.
But let's be honest, the holidays can also be a minefield of social obligations. How do we navigate those potentially tricky situations?
Boundaries are your superpower, my friend. It's okay to politely decline invitations or limit your time in situations that you know will be draining. Remember, you don't have to be everything to everyone, especially during the holidays.
Ooh, I love the concept of boundary superpowers.
Yeah.
I'm going to visualize myself deflecting those unwanted obligations with a sparkly shield of self-care. But in all seriousness, how do we actually set those boundaries without feeling guilty or hurting anyone's feelings?
It starts with honest and open communication. Let your loved ones know what you need and why. Explain that you want to be fully present for the events you do attend, and that means prioritizing your well-being. Most people will understand and respect your honesty.
That's a good reminder. Sometimes we assume the worst, but a little communication can go a long way. Speaking of communication, let's talk about another potential holiday stressor: family dynamics. We all have those relatives who push our buttons, right? How do we handle those situations with grace and maybe even a little bit of sanity?
This is where those boundary superpowers come in handy again. It's about setting clear expectations and sticking to them. For example, if you know that political debates always end in a shouting match, politely but firmly steer the conversation in a different direction. You could say something like, "I'm really enjoying catching up with everyone, but I'd rather not talk about politics tonight. Let's focus on something more positive."
Okay, I'm definitely stealing that line that's so diplomatic yet firm. But what about when those relatives just won't take the hint? Do we have permission to remove ourselves from the situation?
Absolutely. You always have the right to prioritize your mental and emotional well-being. If a conversation is becoming too heated or uncomfortable, excuse yourself politely and take a break. You could say something like, "I need a few minutes to freshen up," or "I'm gonna step outside for some fresh air."
I love that. It's like a strategic retreat to preserve our sanity. But let's be real, sometimes those family gatherings can bring up deeper issues that require more than just a quick break. What advice do you have for navigating those more complex situations?
It's important to remember that you're not obligated to fix or change anyone else's behavior. You can only control your own reactions. If a situation is becoming too toxic or overwhelming, it's perfectly okay to limit your exposure or even choose not to attend certain events. Your mental health comes first.
Wow, that's incredibly empowering. It's like giving ourselves permission to create a holiday experience that truly aligns with our values and needs. But sometimes, even with the best intentions, things don't always go according to plan. What about those unexpected holiday mishaps? The burnt turkey, the forgotten gift, the travel delays. How do we deal with those curveballs without losing our cool?
This is where a healthy dose of humor and perspective comes in. Remember that the holidays are just one small part of a much bigger picture. It's okay if things don't go perfectly. In fact, those imperfections often create the most memorable stories. Embrace the chaos, laugh it off, and focus on the things that truly matter: connection, gratitude, and joy.
That's such a great reminder. It's like giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to let go of the pressure, and to simply enjoy the ride. This has been such an insightful conversation already. I feel like I'm starting to shift my perspective from dread to excitement about the upcoming holidays. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more important aspect of holiday self-care:
I'm intrigued. What is it?
asking for help when we need it. Sometimes we try to do it all, be it all, and handle it all. But that's a recipe for burnout. It's okay to reach out to friends, family, or even a professional if we're feeling overwhelmed.
You're absolutely right. There's strength in acknowledging our limits and seeking support. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of self-awareness. And often simply talking things through with someone we trust can make a world of difference.
So true.
Yeah.
It's like having a sounding board to help us process our thoughts and feelings, especially during a time that can be so emotionally charged. This has been such an eye-opening conversation so far. I feel like I'm already armed with some serious self-care tools to tackle the holidays with more joy and less stress. But we've covered so much ground already. I think we need a little break to process it all. We'll be right back with more insightful tips and strategies in Less Cajun. Part 2 of our holiday self-care deep dive. Don't go anywhere.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about the importance of asking for help when we need it, especially during the holidays.
Yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking we have to do it all ourselves, Be the superhero.
Totally. And I think it's especially hard for people who are natural caretakers.
Oh, absolutely. But the truth is, none of us are meant to go through life alone, and especially during the holidays when things can get so hectic and emotions are running high, it's so important to have that support system.
For sure. So whether it's venting to a friend, delegating tasks to family, or even seeking professional help from a therapist, asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that it's okay to reach out when we're struggling. And sometimes just talking things through can make a huge difference.
It really can. It's
Yeah.
like releasing some of that pressure.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a minute and talk about something else that I think is super important for holiday self-care setting: realistic expectations.
Hmm.
We all have this picture in our minds of how the holidays should be,
Hmm.
but reality rarely lives up to those Hallmark movie fantasies.
Right. It's so true. And I think a lot of our holiday stress comes from this gap between our expectations and reality.
So how do we bridge that gap? Do we just lower our expectations and resign ourselves to a less than magical holiday season?
Not necessarily. It's more about aligning our expectations with what's actually possible. Instead of trying to create the perfect holiday, what if we aimed for a good enough holiday? One that's authentic and meaningful, even if it's not picture perfect.
Okay, I love that reframing. It takes so much pressure off. So instead of striving for perfection, we can focus on creating experiences that actually bring us joy. But how do we actually do that? How do we figure out what truly matters amidst all the holiday noise?
I love this question. One exercise I find helpful is to imagine yourself looking back on the holidays a year from now. What are the memories you want to cherish? What are the moments that will truly matter? Focus on those and let go of the things that don't align with that vision.
Hmm, that's such a good idea. I'm definitely going to try that. But sometimes even with the best intentions, it's still so easy to get caught up in the holiday frenzy. There's just this pressure to do it all, to be at every event, to bake all the cookies, to buy the perfect gift for everyone on our list. How do we resist that pressure and stay true to those self-care goals we've set for ourselves?
Well, it all comes back to those boundaries we talked about earlier. You have the right to say no to anything that doesn't align with your priorities. It's okay to decline invitations to delegate tasks and to set limits on your spending. Your well-being comes first.
That's a good reminder. Thank you. But sometimes even with boundaries in place, certain situations can still trigger those feelings of stress or anxiety. So what are some things we can do in those moments when we're feeling overwhelmed? What are some practical strategies for calming our minds and bodies?
Well, one of the simplest yet most powerful tools is deep breathing. When you feel that stress creeping in, take a few moments to really focus on your breath. Inhale slowly and deeply through your nose. Hold for a few seconds and then exhale slowly through your mouth. Repeat that a few times and you'll be amazed at how much of a difference it can make.
It's true. I've definitely noticed that deep breathing helps me a lot. Are there any other go-to strategies you recommend?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mindfulness meditation can also be incredibly helpful for calming a racing mind. Even just 5 minutes of sitting or lying quietly focusing on your breath or bodily sensations can bring a sense of peace and clarity. There are some great guided meditation apps out there, or you can just find a quiet spot and do it on your own.
I love that. It's like hitting the pause button on all that mental chatter and allowing ourselves to just be present. But what about when those moments of overwhelm hit us, when we're right in the thick of things, like in the middle of a crazy family gathering or at the mall trying to do some last-minute shopping, when we can't exactly escape to a quiet corner for a meditation session?
I hear you. There are definitely techniques you can use in those situations. One that I find helpful is called grounding. It involves focusing on your senses to bring you back to the present moment. Notice the feeling of your feet on the ground, the temperature of the air on your skin, the sounds around you. By tuning into your senses, you can shift your attention away from those anxious thoughts and reconnect with your body and the present moment.
That's so smart. I'm going to try that next time I'm feeling overwhelmed in a public place. But sometimes those feelings of overwhelm are coming from deeper issues that require more than just a quick grounding exercise.
That's true. If you're noticing that you're struggling with intense emotions or recurring patterns of stress and anxiety, it might be a good idea to reach out to a therapist. They can provide a safe and supportive space to explore those deeper issues and develop coping strategies.
Good point. Sometimes we need a little extra support. Okay, so we've talked a lot about managing stress and overwhelm, but I also want to touch on the importance of staying connected with loved ones during the holidays. The holidays are supposed to be a time for togetherness, but they can also be a time of loneliness and isolation, especially for people who are far from family or who have experienced loss.
Absolutely. Loneliness can be a real struggle during the holidays, and for people who are grieving the holidays can be extra tough.
So what can we do to support ourselves and others who might be feeling lonely or isolated during this time?
Reaching out is key. Even a simple phone call or video chat can make a world of difference. Let your loved ones know that you're thinking of them and make an effort to stay in touch. And if you know someone who's going through a tough time, offer a listening ear or a helping hand. Sometimes just knowing that someone cares can make all the difference.
Yes, little acts of kindness go a long way. But let's be real, sometimes even when we're surrounded by people we love, those holiday gatherings can still be a bit overwhelming. So how do we balance that desire for connection with the need for solitude and personal space?
It's all about finding that balance. Communication is key. Let your loved ones know that you need some downtime to recharge. It's okay to excuse yourself from a gathering early or to take a break from socializing to go for a walk or read a book. They'll understand.
That's a good point. I need to get better at communicating my needs, especially during the holidays. So this has been such an insightful conversation so far, and I'm so grateful for all your wisdom and advice. But before we move on, I'm curious, what are some of your personal holiday self-care rituals? What are the things you do to stay grounded and centered during this busy season?
For me, it's all about creating those moments of stillness and reflection. I love going for long walks in nature, listening to calming music, and practicing yoga. Those things really help me reconnect with myself and find a sense of inner peace amidst all the holiday craziness.
I love that. It's a good reminder that self-care doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. It's about finding those small moments throughout the day to nourish our minds, bodies, and spirits. Well, this has been so enlightening already, and I'm excited to keep this conversation going in part 3 of our deep dive into holiday self-care. All right, so we're back for the final part of our holiday self-care deep dive. And before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, setting boundaries.
Oh, yeah, that's so
We
important.
talked about saying no to things that drain us. But I'm wondering, are there any specific phrases or strategies for navigating those conversations where we have to actually communicate our needs to loved ones?
Well, I think the key is to approach those conversations with honesty, kindness, and clarity. So, for example, if you're feeling overwhelmed by all the holiday parties, you could say something like, I love spending time with all of you, but I also really need some quiet time to recharge. Would it be okay if I skipped a couple of events this year so I can be fully present for the ones I do attend?
I like that. It's all about quality time, not just quantity.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember that it's okay to be a little bit selfish during the holidays. It's not about being rude or dismissive, but it's about honoring your own needs so you can truly show up as your best self for the people you love.
So true. It's like they say on airplanes, you have to put on your own oxygen mask first before you can help anyone else.
Exactly. Sometimes self-care means saying no to others so you can say yes to yourself.
Okay, so speaking of things that can be tough during the holidays, I want to talk about dealing with difficult emotions.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
The holidays are supposed to be all about joy and cheer, but let's be real. They can also bring up a lot of other feelings like sadness, grief, loneliness, stress.
Absolutely. It's important to acknowledge that the holidays aren't always happy for everyone, and it's okay to not feel joyful all the time.
So how do we deal with those less than jolly emotions without letting them completely derail our holiday experience?
Well, the key is to allow yourself to actually feel those emotions without judgment. So instead of trying to suppress them or ignore them, just create some space to process them in a healthy way.
So we don't have to force ourselves to put on a happy face all the time.
Not at all. It's okay to feel sad or grumpy or whatever you're feeling, just acknowledge it and let it be.
Okay, that makes me feel so much better. Sometimes I feel like I have to pretend to be happy even when I'm not.
Sometimes just acknowledging those feelings is enough to take away their power.
Yeah.
You can literally say to yourself, I'm feeling stressed right now, and that's okay. That simple act of validation can create a sense of space and allow those emotions to just move through you.
Wow, I love that. But what about when those feelings are more than just a passing thing? When they start to feel really intense or overwhelming.
That's when it might be time to reach out for some professional support. A therapist can help you work through those more challenging emotions and develop coping strategies.
That's a good point. Sometimes we need a little extra help.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about managing stress and difficult emotions, but I also want to make sure we talk about creating joy. It's so easy to get caught up in all the to-dos and obligations that we forget to actually make time for things that make us happy.
Oh, absolutely. Joy is such an important part of self-care, especially during the holidays.
So what are some of your favorite ways to cultivate joy during this busy season?
For me, it's all about those small, everyday moments. Lighting a scented candle, listening to some festive music, taking a walk in the crisp winter air, curling up with a good book by the fire. It's about savoring those little pockets of joy throughout the day.
I love that. It reminds me that joy doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thing. It can be found in the simplest of pleasures. But sometimes we need a little more than just a scented candle to lift our spirits. What about when we're feeling really depleted? What are some more active strategies for generating joy?
Well, think about things that really light you up. Maybe it's working on a creative project, trying a new recipe, learning a new skill. The key is to do something that challenges you in a positive way and leaves you feeling energized and fulfilled.
Okay, so tap into our passions and find things that make us feel alive.
Yes. But I think another important piece is being present in those moments. When you're doing something you enjoy, really try to savor it fully.
What do you mean, like mindfulness?
Exactly. Instead of letting your mind race with a million thoughts and worries, just focus on the sensations of what you're doing. If you're decorating the tree, really notice the sparkle of the ornaments and the scent of pine needles. If you're sipping hot cocoa, really pay attention to the warmth of the mug in your hands and the taste of the chocolate.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. It's about slowing down and truly appreciating those little moments.
Exactly. Those are the moments that create lasting memories.
This has been such an amazing conversation, and I feel like I've learned so much about how to take care of myself during the holidays. But before we wrap up, I have one final question for you. What's the one piece of advice you'd give to our listeners who might be feeling stressed or overwhelmed, or just generally not so jolly about the upcoming holidays?
That's a good one. I think the most important thing is to remember that you have the power to create a holiday experience that feels good to you. So give yourself permission to let go of traditions that no longer serve you, to say no to things that drain your energy, and to prioritize your own well-being. The holidays are meant to be a time of joy and connection, so be kind to yourself, embrace the imperfections, and focus on creating a holiday season that feels authentic and meaningful to you.
That is such a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into holiday self-care.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, we hope you feel inspired to create a holiday season that is full of joy and peace and maybe even a little bit of magic. Until next time, take care and be well.